Welcome to Bitcoins and Gravy, episode 22.
At the time of this recording, we would really like trading to be at $10,000 per Bitcoin. John, what do you think about that?
Now that's gravy. Welcome to Bitcoins and Gravy, and thanks for joining us today as we podcast from East Nashville, Tennessee. I'm John Barrett.
And I'm Lid Shaw.
We're two Bitcoin enthusiasts who love to talk about Bitcoins.
And share what we learn with you, the listener. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for listening to Bitcoins and Gravy.
On today's show, Lidge and I speak with our good friends Cheryl and Billy Carr, a brilliant team from Colorado who are putting their hearts and minds into cultivating and growing Bitcoin awareness through the Satoshi Farms project. Satoshi Farms has become our favorite new website for its abundant offerings of resources to help both the beginner and the expert learn more about the Bitcoin ecosystem.
We also talk with Elise Killeen, an early-stage venture capital investor whose moral compass and strong research skills are facilitating the growth of new Bitcoin startups and projects. Elise talks to us about decentralization and how important it is for the success of the Bitcoin project and for our future. Elise co-founded and is the co-chair of the Women in Venture Finance and Innovation Group and is an invited board member of the Women's Crypto Association for Business Leadership in the Bitcoin innovation ecosystem.
On today's show, Lidge and I welcome Cheryl and Billy Carr, two of our good friends from Colorado who we met at the Texas Bitcoin Conference. So guys, welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome to the show, guys. It was great to meet you down in Texas earlier this year, and we're excited to have you on Bitcoins and Gravy to talk with us.
We're excited to be on Bitcoins and Gravy. It's one of our favorite Bitcoin shows.
Nice. And you guys are the developers of Satoshi Farms and also Quid POS, which is point of sale, right?
That's correct.
So where do you want to start? You guys want to tell us how you got into Bitcoin?
Well, I suppose like a great many other people that I've heard in the space, including Andreas, I first looked at Bitcoin probably around 2010. And I must admit, I dismissed it. I figured, that sounds cool, but something not quite ready for prime time. I clearly did not understand mining. I clearly did not understand difficulty, the rewards, any of that stuff. I just sort of skimmed over it, actually stumble upon was what led me to it.
How could you do that?
Looking back, there's mistakes of life. That's one of the big ones. But regardless, then later on, it came back to my attention, and it was when the price started moving again up towards $100. It re-hit my radar, and I said to Cheryl, I like the look of this Bitcoin thing. I'm going to start trying to buy some. And I made some fancy goal in my head of how many Bitcoins I wanted to get to.
Which we still have not ever achieved.
Nowhere near close.
Right on.
That's okay.
Yeah, he came to me last summer and was like, I'm going to try out some of this Bitcoin. And I didn't get it either. But once he starts talking about some kind of tech and gets it in his head, we kind of just check it out and go for it. So ultimately, when I started researching it and understanding it, it provided a sense of hope, I like to say, because it was a way where I understood the technology end of things and a place where maybe we could put a little savings and money where I could see how the way we were saving currently and putting away money for the future and in our retirement funds was pretty much going backwards. And that's a scary position to be in when you're, mid 40s and thinking about the future. And I kind of got Bitcoin in terms of the technology better than I ever understood stocks and IRAs and all that other kind of stuff. So it provided a sense of a place where we could kind of understand where to put our money.
So that began a bunch of learning for us both. Obviously, we did what many people, again, to mention Andreas has said, where we sort of closed the doors and started learning. And then we'd go hiking and we'd listen and we'd try and find some people online and listen to podcasts. And that ultimately led us to you guys. And that's when we ended up getting tickets and going to the Texas Bitcoin conference, where we were lucky enough to meet you guys and Andreas and a bunch of other top names in the space.
Nice.
Yeah, that was exciting to meet. I met Cheryl when we were having lunch outside at the Texas Bitcoin conference on a gorgeous, beautiful day.
And there at the picnic tables and the little taco stand. Yeah, that was great.
And you played your song, John.
Yeah,
That's right. Lidge
fun.
and I played the song for the people sitting out at the picnic tables.
And so I got to sit down and talk with Cheryl for a while and do a little bit of interviewing, but we didn't get to use it on the show yet. So it was great to have you guys here. And Cheryl, you were telling us about how you guys like to listen to the show, hiking through the hills of Colorado, through the mountains of Colorado, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. We have Bitcoin jargon blasting in the woods. And still to this day, we were laughing about how maybe now we'll be hiking and we'll hear this interview when we're on one of our hikes in the future.
And I heard a rumor that you guys were going to submit a video with Bill, something about Billy and his shirt off or something for the Ode to Satoshi contest. Is that right?
Yeah. Cheryl's trying to convince me. It's just, set and setting, John. Set and setting.
Got it. Yeah, don't forget to enter that because the deadline is, well, we don't know when the deadline is, but
I was going to say, is that contest still on?
yeah, the contest is still on. You can still win, 0.25 Bitcoins, which is 250 millibitcoins. So yeah, definitely enter, guys. We're going to show all of the video clips in the music video, but we're going to pick our favorite one, and that's going to be the winner. So that's that. So yeah, let's move on, guys. Let's talk about
Satoshi Farms, right?
Satoshi Farms.
Yeah, that seems to be directly connected to your learning process about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what happened was we were very inspired after we left the Texas Bitcoin conference. A lot of the talks were people just saying, just do something, and to stop kind of dilly-dallying about, I have this idea, I have that idea. And when we left, I really wanted to do something that could boost Bitcoin and had an idea where, again, we live in a really small, remote town that's up in the mountains. We're not in a big metropolitan area like Denver. And I thought, well, maybe we could go to an area where there's a lot of people, like we need a lot of traffic. And I thought about a farmer's market where there's some decent traffic on a Saturday and there's a lot of trade going on between the vendors. And ultimately, that's what Bitcoin's about. You cut out the middleman and it's a trade between the producer and the consumer directly is the perfect setting for a Bitcoin transaction. And so I thought, wouldn't it be fun if we could actually, instead of having a meetup, because again, we don't really have a huge community here, and I didn't want to set up a meetup where we would put the word out and then one person would show up or two people would show up. I kind of wanted more of a traffic flow, and if people are interested, they'd talk to you, and if they just kind of want to take a card or some information and hear about it and then learn on their own terms, they'd walk away. But even more than that, I wanted to do like a Bitcoin experience where we could actually have a little bit of Bitcoin and put it on people's phones and introduce them to it and set up a actual table where people could purchase products for Bitcoin. And I was going to go out to some of the products that already exist for sale, like for Bitcoin, like the Bees Brothers was a good example. I maybe would have some of their honey. And so wouldn't it be funny if our booth was called Satoshi Farms, just like one of the other, farmers in the market. But in the end, when I started researching about the farmers market, and this was after, of course, I'd already locked in the domain, satoshifarms.com, and started kind of rolling with it, I realized that the farmers markets actually are hugely regulated. And you cannot be a vendor in the farmers market unless, it's very strict rules, unless you grow your product in land within certain zones of the area. And obviously we're not growing product, we're growing with Bitcoin is my motto. So that kind of nixed that idea. But in doing so and coming up with this concept, I had built this website as a place where people could go, and when we approached any of the vendors in terms of accepting Bitcoin and what is Bitcoin, Billy and I kept going through the same story. Our friends and our family would ask, well, how do you explain this? And so we started sending them our favorite links of great podcasts, great videos, great reading that they could do to begin to learn and investigate on their own. So to kind of make it a little bit easier for me, really, and Billy and everybody on their own time, I built this website, which is basically a collaboration of all my favorite things.
When we got back from Texas, Cheryl was so inspired after having met Andreas and, again, a great other bunch of people in the space. And this just poured out of her. She sat down in front of the computer and decided, and the keys just started tapping. And a week, 10 days later, Satoshi Farms was there.
Nice. It looks great. I love the site.
Yeah, so the site is, as I was surfing it, it seems like a wonderful series of explanations about Bitcoin and links to other sites that can show you how to learn more about it.
Yeah, the Cultivate page is really the area where people can cultivate their understanding about Bitcoin. And I tried to break it down so that once they kind of understood what it was, I gave a nod to all the growers in the space, is what I like to call it, where anybody who has some kind of business related to Bitcoin, whether it's about utility, Bitcoin utility, like Coinbase and blockchain, or even trying to get people to understand about Bitcoin and even helping people accept Bitcoin, like big players like BitPay and some of the new players that have come online. And then the markets area is where people who have Bitcoin can go and spend that Bitcoin. And it's broken down into locally where you can use your Bitcoin using We Love Mycelium, their trader feature that they have, and even coin maps and local Bitcoins, to online places where you can spend your Bitcoin. Charities are huge, and even pointing people to the exchanges. So I tried to break it down in such a way that it was easy to understand and not so much me explaining Bitcoin, but leaving the explanation up to the people who've done a great job specializing in these different areas.
Okay, so for some of our listeners, what were some of your favorite links or explanations that you guys had on the site? For example, I know you've mentioned Andreas Antonopoulos. Can you tell our listeners who might not even know who he is a little bit more about that?
Sure. On the Cultivate page, and again, he is one of the speakers who is so gifted in terms of actually understanding, keeping it simple and making it, talking about something that can be fairly complicated and bringing it down to a way that anybody could understand and making it real. And so one of my favorite videos is one from a long time ago in the Bitcoin space, back from November, and it's from the Disrupt convention in Greece. And that's front and center on the Cultivate page. We have a fresh picks area where we try to stay current with things that are happening here and now and feature areas and people who have done articles or podcasts or videos or selling product on that area for our fresh pick of the day.
This sounds like a real labor of love for you, and I guess this is an ongoing thing, right? So you're going to continue to update. This is not something that's going to sit there and get stagnant. So people, our listeners, should know Satoshi Farms is alive, and it's something that you're really being a good steward for. Is that right?
It is. It's very true. I research every day, like I believe we all do in the space. And as interesting things come up and I feel that it's content that everybody should know about, I pretty much update the website and add fresh links. And again, on the Cultivate page, there's a whole reading section where I have archives of some really great articles. I try to be fairly neutral and not be super specific and keep it as a general go-to site about Bitcoin.
Cool. And so as a cultivator of the Bitcoin garden, Satoshi Farms, do you consider yourself to have a green thumb or a gold thumb, or is there a new term for that?
A crypto thumb, man.
A crypto thumb, yeah. Well, so that's very cool. So for new people, newcomers to Bitcoin, it can be quite overwhelming to see all this information out there. It's like sometimes jumping into the New York Times and trying to read the articles and you don't even know the backstory. So listeners, go check out Satoshi Farms. It's a great way to learn the basics or just have a landing place where you can find out more in general about all sorts of different things about Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's an important resource. I really do. I'm glad you guys created that and that it's ongoing.
One of my favorite links on there, I believe it's under the Cultivate section under Read. She has the link to the white paper, which a lot of people, as soon as you say white paper, they go, ooh, they think you're going to start talking scientific. But Satoshi's white paper is so eloquently written and so simple. It's a great read for anybody, and it's right there on the Cultivate page under read.
That's true. You don't need a pocket protector to read Satoshi's white paper. It's very easy to read. It's like a basic textbook.
Yeah.
Simple, plain language. Yeah, it's only 7 pages long too, I think.
I think it's 9 pages.
Oh, there you go. 9.
I'm glad you guys brought up Andreas Antonopoulos and that you're featuring him on the site. I think that's really important. They actually did a DNA test of Andreas recently, and oddly enough, they found out that he is actually the reincarnation of a Greek god.
Wow.
I know.
I'm going to say they found 256 hash algorithms in his DNA or Bitcoin.
Whoa. That's
his
heavy,
DNA
man.
is actually the blockchain. That's bizarre.
Oh, dude. That is totally crypto.
It's funny because I find there's so many amazing people
There
in
really
this
are.
space.
Yeah.
And it's just that he puts it so well.
He's obviously one of our favorites. And we did, like I say, get to meet him at the Texas Bitcoin conference, where he was just as fascinating in real life as he is when you watch him on the videos.
Yeah, he's truly an incredibly engaging speaker. So for somebody like myself who was new to Bitcoin, I listened to Andreas and just immediately got pulled in. So, and then as you explained, there's so many other great speakers in Bitcoin that, once you get pulled in, then you can maybe explore out and listen to everybody else.
I've got to say one more thing. He's not just brilliant and such a great speaker, but he's also a down-to-earth, really nice person.
Yes. And also one of the, not to gush too much about him, but when you ask Andreas a question, even in person, you hear him speak so eloquently on those videos, and you think that must be rehearsed. But I asked him questions in real life there and then, and his answers were, again, amazingly eloquent and to the point, and made me understand things I didn't understand 10 seconds before.
A Greek god. That's the only explanation.
Yeah, it's the only way.
When you said you like listening to other people in the space once you kind of get into it, we really do enjoy listening to your show because your platform is great where you two bounce ideas off of each other, and it's light. It's not super serious, and it makes it fun to listen to because the content can be so overwhelming sometimes. And I think it's important to keep it inspired and fun. And you guys kind of bring that to the table. So
Definitely.
We're longtime listeners of you as well.
Oh, well, dang it. We've been trying to be so serious, John. We're messing up here.
I just wondered if you guys had to vote, would you say that we're the most fun in the entire Bitcoin universe, Lidge and I?
100%.
Yeah, I would have
yeah.
to say that you guys take that one.
Crypto, baby.
How big is the Bitcoin universe?
It's massive.
Can we
dude.
see the edges?
Infinite.
No.
It's infinite.
It's infinite.
Well, no, it's 21 million.
Yeah. Okay, it's 21 million. That's right.
Do you have the Bitcoin Telescope app on your iPhone?
Hey, guys, thank you so much for joining us today to talk to us about Satoshi Farms. And we have another interview coming up with you guys about Quid POS, right?
That's right. Yeah, we'll tell you more about that one in the next one.
Well, so let our listeners know how they can find you and how they can learn more about Satoshi Farms.
Go to satoshifarms.com, and that's farms is plural. And I also tweet, not so much for Satoshi Farms as much as just for Bitcoin in general. My private username is scarbondale on Twitter, and that's 2 R's, S Carbondale. And you could also find me through Satoshi Farms on Twitter. It lists that I am tweeting as S Carbondale.
Do you mind spelling that for our listeners?
SCARRBONDALE.
Nice. Great. Hey, thank you so much, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us today on Bitcoins and Gravy, and we look forward to speaking to you very soon about Quid Smart Vendor. It's very exciting stuff.
Yeah,
It's an exciting project.
Yeah.
Nice. Hey, thanks a million, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. I'm John Barrett.
And I'm Lid Shaw.
We're 2 guys from East Nashville, Tennessee who love talking about Bitcoin. Join us for Bitcoins and Gravy right here as we talk with business owners around the country and around the world who are using Bitcoins right now to grow their businesses.
We interview Bitcoin experts about cutting-edge developments, the future of Bitcoin the currency, and Bitcoin the shared network. We also talk with everyday folks who use Bitcoins instead of money for everyday purchases.
And if you're still not sure about Bitcoins, we can help. Bitcoins and Gravy will get you up to speed with this new fast-paced technology, Bitcoin. We invite you, the listener, to call us on the Bitcoins and Gravy hotline at 615-208-5198 with your questions or comments about Bitcoin.
And remember to tune in right here for Bitcoins and Gravy.
Now that's gravy.
Okay, John, for episode 22, it's time for the Aw Heck segment.
Bring it on.
What did the Pony Express bring in this time?
Well, here's what we got today, Lidge. Here's one from Jeff Markowski. Jeff says, I think you guys might have covered this a while back, but do you know of a cold storage wallet that can handle multiple altcoins? I'm starting to get a ton of these darn QT wallets, and I hate having to open them all up at the same time. A single wallet solution would be great. Cheers, gentlemen. Keep up the great work, Jeff. All right, Jeff. Well, I'll tell you what. We don't have an answer for you. But what we can do is we can give a call out to our listeners. How's that sound, Lidge?
That sounds pretty good, John. Can you explain what a QT wallet is for those who might not know?
Yeah, that's the client. Basically, when you have a solar coin or you have a barbecue coin or you have a Litecoin and you want to have your own Litecoin or barbecue coin or whatever it is wallet, you have to download the QT, which is the client, which is basically the software for that. And it's going to live on your computer and you're going to have a wallet.dat backup file. And it gets into other details where you're supposed to be able to save your wallet.dat file on a thumb drive and keep it somewhere safe and all that stuff, but we can get into that at a later time. So he's asking, hey, instead of having all of these different clients downloaded onto my computer for all of these different altcoins, can we have a cold storage wallet that can keep, multiple altcoins and Bitcoins at the same time?
Okay, cool. So a QT is basically like downloading the app for whatever coin you're interested in. And he's looking for one app to rule them all. So maybe our listeners out there who might know more about finding a wallet that will download all the different altcoins as well as Bitcoins could write in with their suggestions.
Yeah. So if anybody out there has an answer to Jeff's question, just let us know and we'll put it on the show.
Well, John, we also got an email in from Peter in the Netherlands. And Peter writes, just a quick hello from the Netherlands. I listen to your show on SoundCloud every week and like the Nashville vibe. Great podcast on Bitcoin. Can you talk some more on merchants accepting Bitcoin and maybe interview them on how things go and work, or maybe things that need to improve? Keep up the good show. Peter, thank you so much for writing in. We love hearing about our listeners all the way across the globe. And I would agree, John, would you, that one of our focuses here on Bitcoins and Gravy is to bring on merchants that are using and accepting Bitcoin for purchases and transactions and try and help our listening audience find the best way to include it in their own transactions.
Yeah. I mean, heck, man, we interviewed the Bitcoin barber. We've interviewed the Bitcoin house painter. We've interviewed the woman who sells teas online, tealets. So yeah, we're going to do more of that, Peter, I guarantee you. And it's great to hear from Staphorst, the Netherlands. I've never even heard of Staphorst. Sounds like a nice place, though.
Yeah, why do you want to stop the horse?
The Horst.
Oh, thanks. Okay, John, let's beam down to the surface with Captain Kirk Phillips and find out what our Bitcoin correspondent has for us today.
Nice. Here's our guy on the ground from Washington, D.C. for the Bitcoin Beltway Conference 2014. Here we go, Captain Kirk.
Beam it up.
Hello, it's Kirk Phillips, and I'm here at Bitcoins in the Beltway again with Elizabeth Plochet, and she's also one of the co-organizers of the event. Can you just also say a little bit about what it took to organize this event?
Yeah, well, I first heard about this event a few months ago. Jason King had the idea to have a conference in DC, and initially I thought, wow, this seems like a risky place to have a conference, but it's actually the perfect place to have a conference. This is an opportunity for the Bitcoin community to come together and share more about the impact Bitcoin has globally to not just help individuals here in the States, but on an international level. And so the conference team has been awesome. Jason has done tons of work while he's been running across the country to spread awareness of homelessness with an awesome team too, including MK Lords and others. So really excited to see this conference come together and just the variety of speakers here representing not just technical information, but also a lot of political, social, nonprofit information relating to Bitcoin.
Well, there's also a charitable element here, as 10% of the proceeds from the event are going to Sean's Outpost, which is the charitable organization that Jason King did his run across the country for. Is that right?
Exactly. And so it's really neat to see, Jason as a figure in the Bitcoin community because he's been really pressing the idea of Bitcoin and charity for a long time. So Sean's Outpost is a wonderful organization to really reach out to homeless individuals in Pensacola, Florida, but also expand to other cities and use that model, providing meals to the homeless and also educational resource and really helping them get them on their feet. And, there are other organizations like the BitGift Foundation that's really focused on building off the gains of Bitcoin to contribute to charities, to contribute to donation drives. And there's so much good that we can do with Bitcoin. So that's something that I think on this conference is also really highlighting how we can make an impact with the Bitcoin we have, not just the education and information we have about Bitcoin, but the ability to reach people around the world with this money just with internet connection.
That's great. And can you talk about some of the other charitable organizations that you're involved with?
Sure. Well, I actually just joined on with BitPay. BitPay is the lead payment processing company, and they provide a way for charities and nonprofits to accept donations in Bitcoin with a 0% transaction fee, a $0 startup fee, and the ability to cash out in fiat. So I like to say to people, does your favorite charity accept donations in Bitcoin? If not, come and talk to me and we'll get them signed up with a BitPay account. So we've just actually signed on the Women's Annex Foundation, which we have Fareshta Furrow here, who is running that organization to provide digital literacy to women in Afghanistan and be able to send them Bitcoin. So she got to speak at a conference alongside with me this morning, and her story is very compelling. So that's just one of many nonprofits and charities accepting donations in Bitcoin.
Yes, I was actually just talking to her just a few minutes ago, and it was an interesting case where accepting Bitcoin has been able to, it's not just like a different way to accept donations or to use money, but in fact, it's actually empowered the women in Afghanistan in a way that was not possible before. So this is really a great use case of how something is being done that hasn't been done before. And so she was explaining that I guess it's typical in the culture that women would not have their own money, and so now they can actually have their own Bitcoin wallet, they can have their own Bitcoins, they can buy their own stuff with Bitcoins, something that wasn't typical before.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal, and this is what Bitcoin does. It breaks down barriers, and specifically provides hope for people who normally wouldn't have access. There are 2.5 billion people around the world who don't have access to a bank account. And so with Fareshta's organization, I was so thrilled to be able to meet her and have her at this conference, because her story, again, is key to show that you can reach people who were initially told, because you're a woman, you cannot go to the bank by yourself, you can't have a bank account, you can't have a voice. Now these women can have Bitcoin, they can have some sort of financial hope and future, and be able to then use those Bitcoin to further purchase forms of things for education and also empower other people. So it's a really awesome thing that has been started through Bitcoin as a technology.
Yeah, that's an amazing use case, amazing transformation. Is there any other charity that you would think that's worth mentioning to highlight that's had a success story with Bitcoin?
Yeah, there's also a partnership that the BitGive Foundation has with the Water Project, and this is an organization focused on getting clean water to people in sub-Saharan Africa. And to me, that's so neat to see how we can put Bitcoin to good use in that way. And so much of us take life for granted, take having clean water for granted, but now we can put those Bitcoins to good use. So there are a lot of other organizations that are starting to accept donations of Bitcoin, as well as political candidates. BitPay just launched a partnership with Coinbox, which is going to be focusing on getting political candidates to accept donations of Bitcoin to promote more giving transparency, because there's transparency on the blockchain. So it's a no-brainer solution that organizations should accept donations in Bitcoin. It's just much more secure to do so. It's a value proposition, and for things like political campaigns, there's much more transparency.
Oh, that's amazing. So another use case where the laws and the transparency that we talk about with these political donations, that brings a positive benefit and should actually motivate some of the candidates to want to use Bitcoin and accept it for donations.
Yeah, there are already several candidates accepting Bitcoins for donations, one of which is a man named Lucas, who's based in Florida, and he's running in a congressional race, and he has a really good chance of actually winning the seat as a libertarian, and he sees, again, the promise of Bitcoin with kind of the ideological movement behind it. But again, this is just opening the door to so many different things, and what we're finding is the technology behind Bitcoin is so strong that it's actually a really great platform even to build off on other projects as well. My hope is that this conference is going to be a huge success, and people are going to take note of the good in Bitcoin and all the opportunities to literally change the world with Bitcoin and the technology, and be empowered after that and go ahead and make a difference after this conference.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Now, how can some of the listeners take action with some of these things that you've talked about?
Absolutely. So my first question for all the listeners is, does your favorite charity of choice or your faith-based organization you donate to, or even the political party you might give to, do they accept donations in Bitcoin? If they don't, they should. And a way to do so, which is so easy, is through BitPay. So you can actually email me at elizabeth@bitpay.com, and I can get you set up with a BitPay account very easily. You can also go to bitpay.com and just learn a little bit more. But then also, just for you all to be thinking, what are you doing with the Bitcoins you have? Are you just holding on to them, or are you actually using the knowledge you have and giving back of it to organizations like the BitGive Foundation or Sean's Outpost, or any of these other charities that have stepped up to the plate to accept donations in Bitcoin and do good with them? And then finally, are you holding on to this knowledge, or are you sharing it with others and actually sharing how Bitcoin is not just a form of transaction or payment, but a way to provide economic freedom and liberty to people around the world?
Great. Thanks, Elizabeth. I appreciate your time. Kirk out.
On today's show, we're very excited to invite Elise Killeen onto Bitcoins and Gravy.
Elise Killeen is an early-stage venture capital investor. She has co-founded and is the co-chair of the Women in Venture Finance and Innovation Group, and is an invited board member of the Women's Crypto Association for Business Leadership in the Bitcoin innovation ecosystem. Elise, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to speak with you today.
Yes, thank you for joining us today on Bitcoins and Gravy.
So, Elise, can you tell us a little bit about what it means to be a venture capitalist and how you got into that?
So I've been in venture capital for a little less than 3 years, and I focus on early stage investments, as you mentioned. And what that means is we look for entrepreneurs that are focused on applying technology to existing problems, or that are creating new technologies to solve problems or to create value for either consumer or businesses. So half of the time we invest in technologies aimed at the consumer experience, and half of the time we focus on technologies created to enhance business productivity. 100% of my time is not focused on Bitcoin, so it's a split. I'll spend perhaps a third to 40% of my time focusing on cryptocurrency and decentralized ledger technologies. And then the rest of my time is focused on things like big data or cloud infrastructure or marketplace innovation generally. And so I have a broad focus, and the firms that I work with also have a broad focus to looking at technology, to making bets based on what technology we believe will be influential in the future, near and long term. And so certainly Bitcoin and decentralized technologies fit in here. Entrepreneurs will come to us with a need for capital to help grow their business. And then also hopefully with the belief that we can be helpful in their process as well, beyond the capital needs that they have.
Very cool. So you guys are providing funding to Bitcoin startups.
We are. So to startups generally, I've also invested in Bitcoin and decentralized technology startups as well.
Okay, so the firm that you work for, they get their capital from where?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have investors ourselves. So the process is that a fund will raise money from either pension funds or from private family offices. And then we pool together that money to invest in entrepreneurs who need the capital. And so our responsibility is to create value for our investors, and those investors are called limited partners. And so when we're looking to invest in entrepreneurs, we're doing that with the mindset that by doing so, we're creating value through financial returns for our limited partners. And at the same time, remembering that if we're talking about limited partners that are interests of family offices or people that have created private wealth for themselves, they also have interests beyond financial return, right? And so folks are generally interested in investing things that are going to have cultural impact or be transformative to society in some way that touches the limited partner and the culture that surrounds them beyond just producing financial return. And so this is also another reason why Bitcoin is so interesting, because certainly there's a potential for huge cultural impact here. At the same time, there's a potential for financial return. And so that's rare. So you see it outside of the Bitcoin space, but certainly Bitcoin, I think, is one of the largest opportunities to produce cultural return and impact, while at the same time producing financial returns for those who invest.
And so what are some of the ways that you allow yourselves to identify where the value lies in entrepreneurial startups in Bitcoin and also for the social benefits?
And also, are you out there yourself as a scout, or are you working on the computer doing investigation? Yeah, how's that work?
Yeah, so I have 3 primary things that I do in my role in VC. And the first absolutely is as a scout. Really, that's as a friend of entrepreneurial community. It would just mean being involved with the innovation community, knowing folks that are working in the space. And then those folks or friends will surface opportunities to me that they believe are aligned with our interests as investors. So certainly there's a scouting component. The next piece is research. And so that's actually my background. And prior to venture capital, I did research in the field of life sciences. That is applicable to what I do now. I do research on markets and then also on company performance within those markets. So in the Bitcoin space, what that would mean was I would understand how the ecosystem was functioning generally so that when we looked at a deal, we could first evaluate that company's impact and position in the ecosystem more comprehensively. So it's not just about the company, but also about the company's impact and influence on the larger ecosystem. And then the third piece of my work is to be supportive of the companies that we invest in. And we also like to be supportive of entrepreneurs in general outside of our portfolio. But certainly we want to be supportive and are supportive of companies that we invest in, being helpful negotiating partnership contracts. That would mean thinking through business model strategy or creating helpful introductions for our entrepreneurs, helping them recruit talent, just generally being a resource on an as needed basis that a founder or a member of the founder's team, the startup team, can reach out for.
Okay, that's wonderful. And it sounds like you're very thorough and well spoken about this. Clearly, you have a plan and initiative to search for these startups. Are you also scouting for the investors themselves?
That's a great question. So folks don't often think to ask that, but we absolutely do that. So if a deal comes in that we're excited about and want to invest in, and that would mean that it was a smart approach to the space and the entrepreneurs or the leaders of the team were folks that we really believed had great things ahead of them. Sometimes it's helpful for a fundraising round to come from not just one source, but from many or from several at least. That would be called syndicating a deal. And so that's absolutely happened. So it's been the case where a company has come in, we've been a good match and wanted to invest, but perhaps that company had a specific need where another venture fund could well serve them. And in that case, we would want to reach out to that fund and introduce them to the team with the hope that we would all work together. And so that would be a syndicated round. And we've certainly done that before. A way that frequently happens in LA, as a for instance, so I'm based in LA. We have several great funds here that are associated with talent agencies. And often it's beneficial for startups to be partnered with folks in the entertainment space. And so when raising a round, it might be, in some instances, it's helpful to include one of the venture funds that's associated with a talent agency in LA. So that would be a group of folks we would commonly reach out to.
You know, this venture capital thing sounds a lot more complicated than I previously thought. I have been quoting to people what I've been reading as venture capitalist statistics, 2013.
Okay.
$100 million has gone into Bitcoin startups. 2014 so far, we're only halfway through it. 3 times that venture capital has gone into Bitcoin startups. Can you tell us anything about those statistics and where you all fit in with those?
That's interesting. So I think that the best minds right now, or some of the best minds, and certainly the most thoughtful minds, are in the Bitcoin and decentralized ledger space right now. And so funding is rushing to catch up. And so that's why you see more money coming in. And I presume that we'll continue to see the same trend. But that said, I'm wanting to be thoughtful that innovation and the direction of what happens in Bitcoin, and especially the platform or core infrastructure that's created, is not happening because venture capitalists are voting for it to happen, but it is happening because of community discussion or agreement, or at least consensus. I think that, it's non-ideal if core decisions are being made as a result of venture capitalist voting. I think that those things hopefully happen because the developers and business leaders in the space have had, robust discussions and pushed it in one direction. And then the job of the venture capitalists is to come along and I think be supportive where it makes sense, as I mentioned before, from an LP perspective.
Right. I love everything you're saying. And yet we know that there's a lot of money going into the Bitcoin community from the gamblers and people who, who are into porn or whatever, things that don't benefit our society in the ways that you're talking about benefiting.
Right. So those are always the first movers for new technology, right? So the introduction of the internet, first use cases were certainly for, I guess, things that are less palatable by some. And now I like it when a technology allows for folks to have more options about what they can have access to, assuming that access is not harmful to others. So we're not permitted to invest in things that are associated with pornography or gambling, and that would be an agreement with our LPs. So we're disallowed to invest in those things. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin obviously has a much broader application, but I think it's a fantastic sign that those groups have taken up to the crypto space, because it's been a positive indication of the past of valuable technology.
Good point. Good point.
Including the internet and World Wide Web.
Wow.
They may be unpalatable industries, but they're good indicators of the potential of a new technology.
Right, absolutely. And I don't make those judgments myself, but I understand that others, might. And so.
Well, so Elise, you brought up decentralization, and I wanted to ask you what your thoughts and feelings were about the decentralization of Bitcoin, and where is that headed?
Right. So the reason why I'm initially interested in Bitcoin is because it allows for the decentralization of transaction processing. I can transact with you without having to rely upon a third party. And so right now that third party would be traditional financial institutions. And so for you and I, this is not a problem, right? So I can send you money via PayPal, or there's many ways that you and I can transact. But things have changed, and it's changed in such a way that we have a global economy now. I also want freedom, and I want other people to have freedom to be able to transact with those, that have been unfamiliar previously. So what I mean by that is if I have a shop online where I'm selling decorative pieces or candles or something like that, and someone in Eastern Europe wants to purchase, I want them to be able to purchase. And right now that's gated by financial institutions, and there is assessment of risk based on global geography or risk based on socioeconomic status. And they need to do that to protect their interest against fraud. But Bitcoin, we know, allows us to transact in a safe way without relying on third-party institutions. So you and I can transact. And you can also transact with someone in the Ukraine easily, or someone in sub-Saharan Africa easily, if you wish to do so. And we know that the protocol allows us to do that safely because it's decentralized.
Absolutely. As far as the sending of money, the transacting of the Bitcoin, that is easy to do and it's fairly safe. As far as the receiving of goods, you're still faced with some of the traditional hurdles and challenges of trust and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so hopefully, I think that multi-sig and escrow transactions will come in to support that piece that you talked about, the consumer side piece. So we know that merchants are protected by the blockchain. We have to think about how consumers are also protected, and multi-sig and escrow services are aiming to provide that. So that's an area of innovation that, we're interested in seeing continue to develop.
I see. I was just thinking that I already see the foundations being built of a future where centralized businesses and decentralized businesses coexist. It's not my first choice to have it that way, but with companies like Coinbase and BitPay already emerging as power players, and where we see merchants and individuals flocking to these companies, it troubles me. So I think of Mt. Gox as a prime example, right, of how people will act like lemmings even when warned time and time again. If the incentives are there in the Gox situation, money, we could say, or even greed was what drove people like lemmings toward this centralized company and off the centralized cliff. I think it's funny that the Bitcoin Foundation wasn't there warning people of this, truly centralized nature of Gox and the inherent dangers therein. I still haven't heard the foundation express any remorse for their inaction. Any comment about that?
So this is a great example of a trusted third party, right? And I first wanted to say, so you had mentioned that you had seen capital flock to the centralization actually of Bitcoin, and that's the case. And that was kind of why I expressed the point of hoping that venture dollars aren't the only vote or the loudest vote for what gets ahead. And surely consumers here are going to be the loudest vote. Now, from our perspective, we invest in decentralized applications here. So we've not invested in the centralization of Bitcoin. I don't have any plans to do so. So that's always the first look at a company. Is this supporting centralization or decentralization?
Good.
The exchanges are there's clear risk risk there. So I see both sides. So I have friends on the foundation board, and the friends that I have on the board are very, very well intentioned. And then I also have friends that lost money on Mt. Gox. And so it seems that that's almost impossible, right? How did people lose money on Mt. Gox? It was very clear that something was going on. There was many warning bells rung. And I think the thing is that people are busy. So people are busy. People outside of the core Bitcoin community still want to own and use Bitcoin and don't have time to follow what's happening at Mt. Gox or any other exchange. And so we really need to enhance the consumer interface pieces, I think. And I think that we'll see that happening in the next 18 to 36 months, actually. That needs to be more robust so that consumers easily understand what's going on, and it's not a matter of needing to research it or to keep up with stuff. The average person working, a 60-hour-a-week schedule and wanting to spend time with family shouldn't have to be researching their exchange or their bank on the weekend. But you have to do that inside or outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem, unfortunately. This is why decentralization is important, because it removes the need for that.
Yeah.
Sure. So as far as a centralized company goes, like Mt. Gox, for example, you run some dangers and risks of lack of trust through their internal workings. But then if you move to a decentralized blockchain, then you gain sort of a general sense of trust because you can rely on the math, for example. However, there are some risks in the decentralized world too, such as a 51% attack. Do you have any thoughts on that, or would you like to comment on some of the risks in decentralization?
Decentralized platforms are just inherently more secure and anti-fragile. So there's not one point where you can attack to take down a system. And this for us on the venture capital side is really important. And it's important outside of Bitcoin. So I always look to see how fragile a system is and what can shut down a business. And it should be anti-fragile. Now, in Bitcoin, the system being decentralized means that a government, a third-party entity, an attacker can't swoop in and take down one point, which then takes down the system. So the 51% attack is two things, and I think people are using it to mean 51% attack allows double spend. But what a 51% attack actually means, if we're talking about controlling 51% or more of the mining power, is that the system is not decentralized. If there's ownership of 51% or more, or even a number close to 50%, then the system is no longer decentralized. And what that means is that it becomes much more fragile. It's no longer anti-fragile. I think what's important here is to know that whether a 51% player is friendly or not actually doesn't matter, and that in a true decentralized system, the word friendly actually doesn't make sense. So friendly doesn't have a meaning in this system.
Right, because friendly implies that you're able to trust the individual or the entity, and you're trying to say that, no, this is not about trust, and we don't want it to be about, do we find this company to be friendly or not? Can we trust that they're not going to pull something? Well, how can we trust right now that Ghash is, if they have the 51%, that doesn't mean they're going to hold on to the 51%. Things can change pretty quickly in the Bitcoin ecosphere, right? So a couple of things. How long could it be before they no longer have 51% of the computing power? One, and the other thing is, are there other forces that can influence them or that could in some ways control them, or let's just say keep Bitcoin safe?
Yeah, so I think what would be most interesting and what I would presume the core developers would be working on or talking about is making the system so that the system itself actually can't be taken advantage of in that way, or that the system cannot do evil. So not that we hope that no one gains 50% again, or that the ecosystem doesn't turn into a three-party system, but that actually in the code it dispermits reward of such players. And so I think it's interesting when a system can be developed so that that those things are just not possible.
Something that you had sent me, it's an article, and I'm not sure who wrote it, but they wrote, this 51% issue will probably be solved by Bitcoin, but if it is not, one of the altcoins, for instance, Litecoin, will do it, and value will switch to that network.
This was something that I was writing in response to a peer in the venture capital community who was saying, listen, I've heard 51% attack is a non-issue. And conveniently, actually, the person saying it was a non-issue was one of the pool miners for Ghash. So I suppose incentives are kind of aligned for this person to suggest it's a non-issue. But yes, I hope that it changes within Bitcoin so that Bitcoin reward is not possible when you're coming from a majority pool, or that it's changed, or incentives are changed so that growth of pools past 20%, say, is not incentivized. And right now it is incentivized. But if those changes don't happen, certainly it can be the case that another altcoin comes in to enact those changes and prohibit the development of majority players in their own mining ecosystems.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I guess Gavin's got his hands full at this point, and I think one of the core developers, wasn't he starting to sell his Bitcoin and getting worried? And there are other people like Andreas Antonopoulos saying, hey, calm down, everybody, no need to worry. And so I think the Bitcoin community is split. It's a big topic of conversation right now, yeah.
It does seem split. Yep. So Gavin, the core devs beyond Gavin all have their hands full, and it's been said that it's like trying to fix a plane that's in flight. I think it's just such important work, and these folks are appreciated now in the immediate term and will be appreciated, accordingly in the long term as well.
Sure. And anyone who's selling Bitcoin now may be just hoping to buy in again if it goes lower.
That's right.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that it's always good not to panic. And I think that it's great that folks are encouraging that. And then I also understand why someone with a large percentage of their wealth in Bitcoin would want to diversify once the system becomes centralized.
Right. Hey, so now are any of your investors now taking a step back and saying, hey, we're not sure if we want to invest in Bitcoin right now?
So I have heard that from one very smart investor, as a matter of fact, who was taking a step back from making his own investment into the Bitcoin ecosystem separate from venture capital funding. So this was putting personal wealth into Bitcoin. And I'm not sure that there's as much a reason to do that once the system is centralized. Now, when the system becomes decentralized again, I supposing optimistically that it will, I suppose the price will also go up. So this, perhaps is an opportune moment to invest, as the risk associated with centralization should already be priced in.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow, that's some heavy stuff. So I would like to invite you back on the show sometime to give us a heads up on where we are with the 51%. And also to talk about what your firm has done in terms of funding new startups. So Elise.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Yes, indeed, Elise, you are very eloquent and well-spoken. It's a pleasure listening to you talk about all this stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a pleasure speaking to you today. I hope we do get the chance to connect again.
I'm sure of it. And can you tell our listeners how they best can find you?
Sure. So best to find me on Twitter, and that would just be at my first and last name, Elise Killeen. It's ALYSE KILLEEN. I'm on Twitter mostly communicating about decentralization, which is my personal interest in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, Elise, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we look forward to speaking with you again and seeing how things are going with investors and these startups.
Yeah, and I'd like to say that, Lidge and I here with Bitcoins and Gravy, we are decentralized. So if you can find any capital to send our way, please, by all means.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we love to see folks decentralizing, so I'm glad to hear that. And look forward to having you. I feel like you in Tennessee should come visit the Bitcoin folks in LA and experience some of our good weather. So perhaps we'll connect offline soon as well.
That would be great.
Awesome. Well, we'll find reasons for you to do that.
Thank you so much, Elise. And I wanted to point out, too, that we have learned here at Bitcoins and Gravy to substitute our use of the word awesome for the new term crypto. So we're going to sign off by saying crypto to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Crypto to you.
Very crypto interview. Thanks, Elise.
Have a crypto day.
Hey, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on today's show with Billy and Cheryl Carr of SatoshiFarms.com and venture capitalist Elise Killeen. To find out more about our guests and sponsors, visit our show notes at bitcoinsandgravy.com/episode 22. Thank you so much for listening to our show. We greatly appreciate your time and attention. If you like the show, please remember to go to iTunes and leave us a review. Also, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to hear from Bitcoins and Gravy each week.
And remember the Bitcoins and Gravy hotline. Have you ever wanted to be a podcaster? Then call us at 615-208-5198 and leave us a message with your comments, questions, or complaints. This is your opportunity to tell us what you think. If you give us permission, we will put you on the show. So call the Bitcoins and Gravy hotline at 615-208-5198. That's right, that's the Bitcoins and Gravy hotline. And of course, we offer a number of ways for you to download all of our past podcasts. You can go to letstalkbitcoin.com or directly from iTunes, or you can go to our website, bitcoinsandgravy.com. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and leave a review or comment on iTunes or SoundCloud. Let us know what you like or where we can improve.
And remember, it's your reviews and comments that help new listeners discover Bitcoins and Gravy, plus all the other great shows on the Let's Talk Bitcoin Podcast Network. And we thank you for your generous tips and donations.
I'm John Barrett.
And I'm Lij Shaw.